More on our top story now, the resignation of Grant Shapps following these claims that he didn't do enough to deal with claims of bullying in the Conservative Party. He says the buck should stop with him, but will his decision to stand down be enough to placate the party's critics? Well, I'm joined now from Liverpool by Phillip Blond, a former advisor to David Cameron, who's now director of the think tank Respublica. Thanks very much indeed for joining us, Mr. Blond. First of all, is this just a case of a bit of mismanagement where an individual hasn't done his job properly, or do you think there's something more chronic within the party that we're going to learn about?
Well, I think there's probably something more chronic in politics, full stop. I mean, politics is a dirty game, and there's a lot of intimidation. There's a lot of, I get something on you, you get something on me. And I think what's happened here is that Mark Clark seems to have been a particularly nasty example, a particularly extreme example of what arguably is common practice. Now, it may well be, and it looks like CCHQ, that's Conservative Central Office, didn't have a good structure in place for these type of complaints. It looks to me more like incompetence than conspiracy, but who knows? And Grant Shapps, I think, has done the honourable thing by resigning. But I doubt the scandal will end there. I mean, I think, there are problems also for the current party chairman, Lord Feldman. And I think this, unfortunately, will run and run. And I think what the party should do is publish the results of its internal inquiry and reform itself. But other parties suffer from this, I think, just as much as the Conservative Party currently are.
Because this may or may not be linked to the apparent suicide of a youth worker within the party, there will be plenty of those surrounding this event who will be eager, indeed angry and keen to get all the answers they can from what went on. So the examination perhaps of Downing Street and how it runs its different satellite operations might be quite forensic.
Well, I think, you have the death of a young man here, the needless death of a young man. And, what you have is all parties have a youth wing. They're often young, impressionable, but very talented people who, by the same token, are very vulnerable. And they're very vulnerable to manipulation because they want to succeed in a high status world. And they're open to the sort of manipulation that seems to have been present during these so-called road trips. So I think this type of forensic analysis is actually needed. But I think outside of the person who appears, and we don't know, these are just allegations, appears to be responsible. What needs to happen is, I think, structural reform of the complaints procedures, probably for all of our parties. I mean, the Liberal Democrats had the same thing with Lord Renard, where people felt complaints were not being looked at. And this is a whole history in our country of institutions not being good at dealing with complaints against their own powerful members. So I think this cuts across, really, and I think we just await the results of the inquiry. But I think,
Philip, we're running out of time, but I want to get your view. I mean, normally a resignation like this protects the leadership. Do you think this could unravel and start approaching the doorsteps of the Prime Minister?
Well, we do know that the complaints have been sent to people other than Grant Shapps. People have said that they've sent it to the current party chairman. So I think that this won't end it, and it will go on. But I don't see any reason why it would end at the door of the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister doesn't. The buck does stop with others before him, but I think the buck has still some places to travel.
Phillip Blond, thanks very much indeed for joining us tonight here on Sky News.